We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets.
I have the body of a weak and feeble woman.
All men are created equal. But I have a dream.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of ModsPod. Today we have Isla and Casey with us and we're going to be talking about the Suffragettes.
We are going to be talking about the Suffragettes, who they were and what they stood for, and we're also going to be talking about Emily Davison and whether her death was suicide or a tragic act.
Oh, big topic, Emily Davison. So, Year 9 do this, don't they? So you're already ahead of the game by doing this when you get to Year 9. So for everyone listening, Casey and Isla are just in Year 7 and we're already working on this topic already. Looking forward to how you remember this in Year 9. So you've been discussing this at home, I think, haven't you, with your brother, who is in Year 9. I think it's caused a few discussions, hasn't it? So hopefully by the end of this podcast, we'll be able to have a definitive answer. Maybe you can convince the listeners to see what you think.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Or have you got different opinions?
I believe it was an accident. I believe it was an accident.
Okay, so I might have to be a little bit naughty then today. And I might say a few things just to wind you up. How does that sound?
The Suffragettes were a group of activists who fought for the right of women to vote. It was made up of mainly women, but there were also some men.
Okay, so like their husbands?
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know that some men were in that. A lot of people won't know that, will they? I think it was all just these women, but some men as well. Cool.
The Suffragettes used many different ways to try and get their message across, including window smashing, arson, and propaganda. Many of the methods broke the law, but these women were desperate to get their message across, desperate to have the same rights as men. The Suffragettes were also known as terrorists.
Terrorists? Wow, that's quite controversial, isn't it? Yeah. So when we think of terrorists today, we think about like ISIS and, the Manchester Arena and 9/11 and things like that. So we think that they're really evil, really bad. And here we're potentially saying that these suffragettes were terrorists.
Yeah. I think that they didn't really care about being called terrorists. They just wanted to get their message across. They were just desperate for people to know what was going on with women. Yeah,
whatever it takes. Yeah. Even anything. Burning buildings down, you've said, arson.
Well, chain themselves to buildings, trains.
So do you think, is there a line between being an activist and fighting for something you believe in and being a terrorist?
I think there is a line, but I think that line is very easy to cross.
I think the definition of a terrorist act is to change the law or a country using violence. So I suppose in theory they really were terrorists, weren't they?
Yeah, because they wanted to have votes for women, and by doing it they were burning buildings and using window smashing, and they were doing things that broke the law to get their message across. Yeah.
Were they killing anyone though, or does that not matter, do you think? I suppose potentially people could have died, couldn't they, with those actions?
Yeah.
All right. And obviously Emily Davison herself, which we'll maybe talk about in a minute, when you say it was an accident. I think it was on purpose. I think she committed suicide. So, speaking of Emily Davison, the main character in this show, over to you.
Emily Davison was a suffragette martyr who died in 1913, 4 days after she was trampled on by King George V's horse at the Epsom Derby.
Right, so the King's horse did it. Yeah. So when you use the term martyr, this is where I'm going to be really annoying now. A martyr is somebody who dies on purpose for their beliefs. So could it have been an accident? I'm just being annoying.
Yeah, I don't know. Because people classed her as a martyr because they believe she committed suicide.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily she did.
Okay, good twisting around there. I'm going to have to work harder thing today, aren't I? All right, so the Derby, why do you think they chose the Derby?
Because it was a big race. It was a big race in history.
Yeah. The biggest race, actually. Anyone who's anybody's there. Royalty, sheiks, sultans from around the world. So if you're going to make a statement, it's probably a good place to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a really big race.
Yeah.
The fact it was the King's horse also makes another big difference. It wasn't any horse in the race. It was the King's horse.
Yeah. So are you saying that Emily Davison targeted that horse?
Yeah, I think she did to make a bigger difference.
Yes. Yeah. So what was she hoping would happen with the horse?
I think she was just she was trying to get a banner pinned onto the horse that had the suffragette colours on it.
Okay.
So then when the horse crossed the line, everyone thought, the king's horse has got a suffragette banner on it. We need to vote for women.
Yeah, so it would be embarrassing for men, wouldn't it? For the men, if the king's horse. So the photographs around the world, that'd be so embarrassing. Super clever. So you're saying that Emily Davison wanted to put this banner on and it all went tragically wrong?
Yeah. I think she just missed the reins or something like that. Because I don't think she was expecting the horse to jump. I think she was expecting the horse to go to the side or something, not jump off.
Oh, okay. So we could have a little think. I've got some sources we could talk about in a little bit about that. So she gets hit by this horse anyway, because it did jump, as you say. Isn't that what a racehorse would do, though?
Yeah, I think it is.
So that supports you as well a little bit, doesn't it, in saying an accident, because she just didn't think the horse would jump.
Yeah.
Which you could say was a bit foolish, but it definitely supports the idea that it was an accident. Yeah. She thought the horse would just sort of run past and she could put this banner on.
Yeah.
Okay, I wish it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be. You might still convince us all, because everyone listening to this is going to have an opinion at the end of this, aren't they? So after she was hit, what happened?
So after she was hit, she fell to the floor and she was in a coma for 4 days. And after that, she died.
Right, the horse was okay?
Yeah, the horse was fine. It just got off and ran off.
Did it? That's sort of what they're maybe trained to do when they fall. What about the jockey? Do we know anything about the jockey?
The jockey, he was hurt. He had a few injuries, but they weren't severe. But he committed suicide because he felt or he didn't feel, but he, in his dreams and stuff like that, he just had her face in following him everywhere, and he just thought it was his fault. So he committed suicide, so he didn't have to live with that.
Yeah, I can see why that could psychologically damage somebody, couldn't it? Yeah. So whether or not he saw her face, I wondered if he did. Every time he shut his eyes, he could see that poor woman's face. Yeah. That would definitely do some damage, wouldn't it? Yeah. So before we discuss this little argument, this theory of yours that it was an accident, shall we talk a little bit about who the woman was? Who was Emily Davison, and does it sound like the kind of thing that somebody like her might do? So what do we know about Emily Davison as a person?
Well, she came from a very, very wealthy family. She had a good social standing in life. She was not married, but she had a mum and a dad. She had siblings. However, they did die before her, so she eventually had nothing. So she had nothing to lose.
So suicide then? No. Grr. Sorry. So she had a degree.
Yeah.
Which gives us a bit of an idea about the kind of person that she was. In this time, women were obviously not expected to advance themselves. So what does that suggest to you about her personality, that she was able to sort of fight through that?
I think she was a very strong person, mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not physically, but mentally she was very strong. She might have had friends who were leading towards being a suffragette, and she, in her mind, maybe she had nothing, and she just thought, why not? I've got nothing to lose. So she just went rogue.
Yeah, she went rogue. She definitely did. I like the fact that you're saying she's very strong-minded.
Yeah.
In order to push through and get this degree against all the odds. So she clearly knows what she wants. This is a woman who knows what she wants.
Yeah.
The fact that she's got a degree might suggest she's quite clever, which you think, would that not mean that she might have not made the mistake that she made on the day about thinking the horse wouldn't jump? Or are we talking about split decisions on a day?
I think it was just something she was so focused on that day she didn't really think. Yeah. She was so focused. And another thing is that made me at the start think she committed suicide was she jumped off a balcony while she was in prison. She jumped off the balcony and purposely tried to kill herself. She landed on her head purposely.
She said something. She had a quote there, didn't she? She said when she'd done that, what did she say? Do you know the quote?
Was it the idea in my mind was one big tragedy may save many others?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is annoying you a little bit more because this has helped me a little bit in say suicide. But she said, and that was a year before when she jumped threw herself off the prison railings. The idea in my mind was one big tragedy might save others. It sort of suggests, doesn't it, that she was willing to die, to make a bit of a sacrifice almost, to be the martyr that you mentioned before. So if she was prepared to do it the year earlier, would she not be prepared to do it a year later?
I don't know, because in that moment she could have thought, maybe if I make a big announcement at a certain area, but it doesn't get exactly what I want, I can go again if I don't die. But the fact she died, then it means that has got to be her last thing. It has got to give the biggest impact she can give.
Mm-hmm. And that is all we've got, isn't it? Our life is all we've got, isn't it? All right. So before Emily's death, before this happened, she was in prison a lot, was she? So obviously she was a high up suffragette.
But she'd been in prison for the suffragette cause many times, and while she was in prison, she said one big tragedy could save the world, and she was like, she didn't really, I don't know how to say this without she didn't really know, or no, she did know what she was doing at the time, but she just wanted to be heard. She wanted to have the same opinion as men, and maybe at the time she was angry that she couldn't have the same right. Maybe she wanted to get more knowledge or be better, and that's what led her, because she had nothing, she couldn't do anything.
I agree. Angry is definitely the word, isn't it? It's not fair, is it, that women should ever have been not equal, and we've still got a bit of a fight today, haven't we? To get women and men a little bit more equal, or a lot more equal in some cases. So she's a bit of a hero, really, isn't she? Okay, so she had been in prison loads of times. She was a bit, I think, probably getting fed up with some of the treatments in prison. Do you know what kind of stuff happened in prison if they sort of stopped eating?
Force feeding.
Yeah, so what was that about, force feeding them?
It was there was where women didn't have food at all in prison, and so they were force fed. So Ethan said, my brother, that they were force fed so the prison didn't look bad, because if they died in prison that would look really bad on the law. So
even though they're criminals, they couldn't die in prison.
No.
So the prison officers were trying to feed them, and the women just stopped eating, hoping to die. Can you imagine the impact that would have in the newspapers? Government officials, suffragettes die in their care.
Yeah.
So they started force feeding them. Do you know any of the details about that, or maybe a bit?
Where a tube goes down their throat or up their nose, and then liquid's poured into it, and then it makes them gag and stuff.
It's really painful. So they talk about the symptoms of that. Their ears pop. It causes damage, obviously, going through all your tubes and stuff. Really horrific. And Emily herself, this happened to her several times. So when you say angry and fed up, you've definitely painted a really clear picture of why she might be. All right. So just really quickly going back to this thing where she threw herself off the balcony, do you reckon that had an impact in other ways?
Yeah, I think because she suffered severe head injuries, that could have impaired her ability to think straight. So at the time when she thought, oh yeah, I'll do this, maybe she wasn't thinking straight. Maybe she didn't really know what she was doing.
All right, that's true. It's very possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the day before the rally then, the sources tell us that she had a bit of an encounter with a bit of a ghost. I mean, that's the most ridiculous way to put it. But she was with a statue of Joan of Arc.
Yeah, she was with the Joan of Arc statue at a rally the day before the race.
So this Joan of Arc, she was a famous woman who was French, and she dressed up as a man to fight against the English. And in the end, she was caught by the English, and she was prepared to die. She's one of the biggest martyrs in history, really. And the English burned her alive. And she was very brave and all those things. So she's gone down in history as a massive martyr. Yeah. So the night before the derby, the suffragettes were around the statue of Joan of Arc. Yeah. So what are you saying, that she might have been inspired by Joan of Arc? Yeah,
I think she was 100% inspired by Joan of Arc, because it said in the research that I did, it said that Emily Davison was heard to say in front of the Joan of Arc statue, to lay down life for friends that is glorious, selfless and inspiring, which definitely meant that she was very inspired by the Joan of Arc statue, and she wanted to be just like her and prove a point to everyone.
Right. Wow. So to lay down your life for your friends is glorious.
She was almost inferring that she was going to do something, but they didn't know what.
Yeah. And then, of course, the next day she did. Kind of would suggest suicide, wouldn't it? Sorry. I know. We've got plenty of sources still to go. The next day, so the insight her frame of mind was clearly about doing something big.
Yeah.
It seems from what you're telling me that tomorrow morning or tomorrow at the derby, something big was going to happen.
Yeah.
Whether it was her death or not.
I think people knew that something was going to come. I think a lot of people knew that Emily Davison was doing stunts all over the place. And maybe they weren't really big, so not a lot of people knew about them. But they knew that something big was going to come, because no difference was being made, almost no difference was being made by some of the things she was doing. So I think people almost knew, other suffragettes knew, that she was going to do something big, and it was going to be very big.
Yeah. And that was to put the banner over the King's horse, cross the finish line, the world would see it. Wow. Wow, what a brilliant plan. So
it didn't work for her.
Let's have a think about then, to support you a little bit, because I obviously think suicide, but you're saying some really good things. One good bit of evidence that we've got that might support that this was it was an accident was the fact that she'd been practicing.
She'd been practicing, so like when she was on the day, when she came up to the horse, hopefully she wouldn't get killed, and if she did, it would be an accident.
Yeah, so what was she practicing? What was she doing?
She was practicing pinning badges onto moving horses days before the derby, which almost infers it was not suicide.
Okay, you can have that one.
And it was like, she just wanted to pin a badge onto the horse to make awareness.
Yeah, so she's practicing all this stuff. Why on earth would you practice if you were just going to kill yourself? I think is that your point there?
Yeah.
So she's practicing, and I think one of the issues with that is that when it went wrong, this terrible accident, is that she's practicing, I suppose, with horses that know her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a horsey person, far from it, but from what I've heard people say is that horses are like any other pet.
Yeah.
They sort of know you, and so perhaps they weren't as frightened by her, or and then the issue was that she was maybe expecting the horse on the day would be the same as these horses she was practicing with.
I think she got very used to tame horses. Like, I'm not saying Anma the King's horse wasn't tame, but I'm saying like that she was practicing every day, almost every day, to pinning badges on, and those horses were used to at that time of day. There was a lady gonna come with a whole load of badges, run at them, tie it on, and then they were just gonna run off, and they were almost used to it after a while. But the King's horse was not one of them. So Anma, as it went by, it was like, oh my goodness, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it was very spooked by her.
Yeah. Spook's the word, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like that because she knew the horses that she was training with, the horses like going like, don't want her. But because the King's horse didn't know her, it was like kind of scared, so it just like jumped over.
But it's easy, I think, to spook a horse, isn't it? Sometimes living in our village, the horses go past all the time, and if you rash your car past quickly or something, they get spooked and they jump. So spooked is a really good word. That's a word that horse people, when we do this in class, often use. So when it's seen this lady on the track that it shouldn't be there, it's done the natural thing that a racehorse does, is to jump. And that's what happened, and it hit her and knocked her over.
Yeah, I think like racists are very used to, you run and anything where you jump, like that's their mindset. Like that, they know you run and you jump. So seeing someone, they're like, you run and you jump. Yeah. It's because, but like, then like her arms moving around all around them, it's just like, oh my goodness, this is not usual. Yeah. Like the horse was not expecting her to move.
Are you saying she did have her arms outstretched? What was she trying to do there?
I think she was trying to grab the reins of the horse.
And what got caught as it jumped up?
Yeah.
And she was obviously trying to put the banner on, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's going to look, isn't it, like you say, with hands waving about and stuff, that horse is definitely going to react quite badly.
Yeah.
All right. So after she was hit, the police obviously are involved.
Yeah.
And we've got some information about what they found on her.
Yeah, there was a suffragette flag pinned to the back of her coat, and she had badges beside her body. So she was clearly at the racetrack, aware, like there to raise awareness for the suffragette cause. But no one knows how far she was prepared to go.
All right. So she had these flags, and she was clearly going to either put them on the King's horse. So that's proof right there. It was an accident, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the police officer also found a diary with appointments in for the next few weeks. Yeah. Some parties and balls and things she was due to go to.
So that suggests it was an accident, because if she had those booked in, maybe she'd already agreed to them. But she could have written them in there and then thought of the idea and just not crossed them out.
So when she wrote them, she wasn't planning to kill herself, but potentially what you're saying is on the day she just decided enough was enough. Yeah. I think people sometimes say that she might have written those dates in just to get people off the scent. And what I always say back to that is, if you were prepared to die, and why would you make it look like an accident? If you were going to die, you'd want it to be a martyr. You'd want to go down as history like someone like Joan of Arc, who did it on purpose. You wouldn't want to make it look like an accident, would you? Because that just says, oh, a stupid woman, look, you messed that up. So I don't think she would have made that up. I think those appointments were definitely genuine.
Yeah.
She's obviously, as you've said, she was high up in the suffragette movement. She's going to be in these important meetings. And also she had return tickets on the train. So that definitely suggests accident, doesn't it?
Yeah, like on the day you could only buy return train tickets.
Oh, really? Okay, so that sort of takes that point away then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you could only buy return tickets on the day, like a special ticket. All right, so that doesn't help, does it, at all? All right, but definitely the diary suggests accident.
Yeah.
The fact that she had the flags on her coat suggests accident, because she was planning to do something with that, not to die. All right. So some people argue then that this ticket is or isn't a big deal. Should we make it a big deal or not?
I don't believe that the ticket has a lot to do with it because, yes, she had a return train ticket, but as Isla said, on the day you could only buy a return train ticket.
Yeah.
So it was just something she had. Like, if she had a pen in her bag, that couldn't have meant anything. So it was just something in her bag or by.
That is really important information, isn't it? Because I think lots of people for many, many years have used that train ticket as their go-to evidence. Yes, definitely accidents because she had a return ticket.
Yeah.
Wow, good discovery there. So back to Emily as a person. Intelligent woman, brought up wealthy.
She was a very intelligent woman. She had good social standing. She was brought up in a very wealthy house. But as we said earlier, her father had died before her. Her siblings had died, and she had nothing. She wasn't married. So she was she was an outcast from society. She was on her own.
So are you telling me that she was quite close to her mum then? So we're talking about her family and things. So she was obviously, very close to her mum. Yeah. So what do we know about, there's a suggestion that she was so close that she would not have committed suicide without telling her mum.
Yeah. Well, I think that maybe she would have told her mum, and she could have written a letter to her mum, but told her mum to burn it because she wanted to be a hero. She wanted to make a difference. So her mum could have read that, made sure she was the only one, and then got rid of it, in a very clear way that she knew it was gone completely.
So it's really sad. She's going to lose her daughter, but she's doing this great thing and she's proud of her in a way.
Yeah. I think her mum was very proud. But then maybe part of her mum was like, no, please don't do it. It's fine, we'll just have to live like this. But then other parts of her felt, yes, do it.
Did you think it's likely then that her mum would do that and go let everyone debate this topic for months and years and forevermore when she knew all along that it was suicide?
Yeah.
You think? So she's obviously, I think, going to be probably similar to her daughter in that women's rights and things.
I think her mum was really sad that she was going to do that because she'd lost the rest of her family and she was the only person she had left.
That's what I was thinking. So so she's proud of her, but I don't know. So the person who said apparently that she wouldn't do this without telling her mum was Sylvia Pankhurst, who is one of the leaders of the Suffragettes. Would she know Emily Davison enough to make that judgment?
I don't know, because if she's the leader and Emily Davison's just a suffragette in the group, then it doesn't necessarily give you enough information to say they were best friends. Because, in Emily Davison's eyes, that's her leader, not her best friend. Yeah. So the leader could have been really mean, but just said this one fact to act like her best friend was a hero. Yeah.
But would she want... it's sad and it's tragic that Emily's dead. Would Sylvia Pankhurst and the Pankhurst family, would they want Emily to have died as a martyr? Would that help the suffragette cause?
Yeah, I think it would really help the suffragette cause because they've got another strong... Well, they haven't got her necessarily, but they've had someone who was strong and determined and did something which makes other women interested to come and fight and be strong.
Yeah. So what they've now got their very own Joan of Arc, haven't they?
Yeah.
Emily Davison has become the Joan of Arc of the suffragette movement.
Yeah.
Forevermore. She's going to inspire women and everything in the future. Wow. Interesting point there. Yeah. So where are we with this then? Have we managed to convince ourselves out of this, or are you still happy with accident?
I'm happy with accident.
Yeah. What source really do you think was your best bit? What bits really clinched it for you?
I think the fact that she was there to raise awareness for the suffragette cause. She was angry at prison, being in prison. She basically had enough of how people were treating women, and I think that that's really clear. That she was angry and she wanted women to be who they were, not controlled.
And equal.
Yeah.
And free. All right. So I think you've done a good job of convincing me, actually. At the start of this ModsPod, I was really convinced suicide, where you've raised some really, really good bits. So we talk about the suffragettes and the things they did were pretty bad.
Yeah.
But necessary, do you think?
I think all they wanted was to get their message across.
Yeah.
And they were going to do that whatever. So it didn't really matter who it was going to, who was it coming for, but they were going to get their message across. So I don't know if they wanted to like target a specific person to like use them, or they just used people or a horse or a race, or they just targeted one thing.
Yeah. I think on this race was definitely because of the derby, the world thing, but everything else they did was just purely desperation and prepared to do almost anything.
And I think that it did make a big difference, because if it didn't make a difference, everyone would have forgotten about it, because it was years and years and years ago. But to this day, young girls are still talking about this, and they're still going, oh, she did that just so we have rights.
Yeah.
So I think it was a big thing, because we wouldn't have rights now. Those women, they wouldn't have rights. They would be thought as second-class citizens.
She didn't do that. Us women or girls wouldn't have the right to vote for anything. It'd just be men voting.
Yeah. I think she's amazing.
Yeah.
I think the suffragettes were amazing. I think I really support that, and I think if I was around at the time, I would like to think that I would be in there supporting this too. So we're still fighting a bit today, haven't we? We need a bit of equality still.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's a bit easier, isn't it, to be inspired by people like Emily Davison, who keep fighting. So I suppose there's a question, really, isn't there, when this whole thing to end with is what's your big question?
What would you be prepared to do if you were desperate?
That's a good question, Casey. Live or die? I don't know. Oh, that's a big
It
question.
depends how big it was. Like, with school, if it's just like something with the meals, then I wouldn't die for that. I would just get on with eating, like, because we have great food in the school.
Yeah,
But if it was something like,
girls didn't have the right to
if
love.
it was something like girls were treated really badly and they couldn't learn and they couldn't have education, then maybe.
Okay, I get that. I don't know. For school dinners, I might be prepared. If I could have macaroni and cheese every single day from the canteen, I might be prepared to do that. So this reminds me of one of the best films, I think. Obviously, young people will obviously say that, but Mary Poppins, the original, there was a scene in there where a sister suffragette, was singing a song. She'd just come back because everyone's been chained to the Prime Minister's car. She's been arrested, and they're all celebrating these big events, chasing and spitting the Prime Ministers or politicians. And she says in the song, our daughters will adore us, and we'll sing in joyful chorus, thank God, sister suffragettes. What do you think they mean by that? Our daughters will adore us.
I think it means that all the women and girls will thank their great
All future women will look back on their great grandparents and grandmothers and great aunts and things who were chained to walls and beaten up and force fed and all these things. Do you as two 11-year-olds feel proud and grateful for the things they went through so you can be?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't be in this school, we wouldn't be doing this podcast if it wasn't for suffragettes campaigning for women's rights.
Yeah.
So that's very important, because people don't think, they just think, oh yeah, we have rights. But you didn't have rights, and you wouldn't if these very strong-minded women didn't give their lives.
Yeah. Regardless of how bad it was that they did it, thank goodness that they did it. So that was excellent. I really enjoyed that. I'm a bit annoyed that you managed to change my mind a little bit. So with that in mind, we'll say goodbye. So thank you, Casey and Isla, and we'll see you soon for the next ModsPod. Thank you very much. See you later.
Bye.